Welcome to the 2022-23 series of the Business and Professional Coalition. We are convening this community today and at all BPC events to promote learning and conversation around substantive topics relevant to the economic development of our region and to strengthen the relationships amongst each other and between the college and our broader community. Today's guest, Travis Hessman, will challenge us to think not only about the future of manufacturing, but how new technologies will disrupt our very ways of thinking about ourselves, the labor that we do, and the things that we create. The Business and Professional Coalition is made possible by the Sam and Jean Johnson Distinguished Visitors Program. Our generous sponsors include Riley Construction, PID Architects, RTM Engineering Consultants, Lee Mechanical, Kenosha County, and Haribo. Our coalition sponsors support the Carthage Fund and honor the legacy of one of our founders, Ralph Tenuta, through the Tenuta Experiential Learning Fund, which helps our students participate in paid and unpaid internships across the nation. Those internships are coordinated through the Aspire Center. Can my colleagues at the Aspire program please stand up and wave to our broader community? These folks are experts in different areas of careers that our students are interested in and are exceptional at getting them placed in internships and work opportunities. So if you are interested in hiring a Carthage student or having an intern at your offices, please mark them, hand over a business card, or drop one at the end of the program at our welcome table. And one last note before we get going, the cupcakes in front of you are gluten-free pumpkin cupcakes. I hope they're delicious. I believe they are definitely delicious. It's my great pleasure, before we have our primary speaker, to introduce one student who has had an exceptional internship experience, Amanda Strebe.
Hello, everybody. My name is Amanda Strebe, and I'm a senior studying physics and computer science. And I'm the recipient of the Honors Scholarship and the Webb, Albert, and Mary Scholarships. And because of my academic status, it's given me some pretty awesome opportunities. For example, as a member of the Society of Physics Students, I've attended the Conference for Undergraduate Women in Physics, and recently the Physics Congress in Washington, D.C. At both of these events, I met amazing physicists who offered insight to their lives as researchers and professionals. That was helpful to me because I am also a researcher, and I have been for about 2 years. The research I do is funded by NASA through WSGC, or Wisconsin Space Grant Consortium. I work on developing a new and more effective fuel gauging method for zero-gravity environments. So I've flown on zero-gravity flights, as well as sent my experiments up on Blue Origin rockets. This past summer, I actually worked on the same research as an intern at NASA's Johnson Space Center, where I helped write software for testing purposes. To help me participate in this internship, I was awarded the SMEDS internship gift through the Aspire Center. Yeah, I really never imagined that I would be doing the things that I am doing, but thanks to these donors' generosity and Carthage's generosity, I'm able to. So thank you. And here is President Swallow.
Well, thank you, Amanda. And what you just heard is probably the deep fact about so much of the great things in the world and about education. So Amanda said she never thought she'd be doing what she's doing today. I had a great opportunity to spend some time with our speaker last night, and he was telling me about being an English major and imagining being an academic, and never thought he would be doing what he's doing. I will tell you that I'm a math professor who thought he would be teaching calculus every year for the rest of his life. Never thought I'd be doing what I'm doing, but it's a joy. It's the liberal arts. It's the broad education that brings all this possible, with the support of everyone else who is finding how to put talent with opportunity, and in some cases, create jobs for people, recognizing that opportunity. We are so pleased to have Travis Hessman with us. He is the VP for Content at Endeavor Media Group, a company that holds many brands together, 100 brands, as I understand. And so I asked Travis, so how do you manage content? Yes, we're going to talk about manufacturing and IoT and all those things, but just from a day-to-day basis, how do you do this across 100 brands? And he said, oh, it's easy. I have a team. And so tell me about your team. He says, I have 167 editors. I don't know about you, but the answer didn't help me understand any more than it was before. But we'll leave that to him. So he is part futurist, manufacturing geek, someone who took an English major, went into journalism, started through Industry Week, and has his finger on the pulse in what I would say is a reasonable way, trying to distinguish the hype and the actual impact from things as varied as artificial intelligence, the Internet of Things, advanced manufacturing, batteries, going cordless, all those things. And so without any further ado, let's all welcome Travis Hessman.
All right, thank you very much. All right, hello everyone. And that was a really nice introduction. I usually try to bury the English major part of my career, but we're leading with it here. We'll go with that, that's cool. Because what I'm here to do today is to talk about all of the coolest stuff that we can imagine. We're talking about manufacturing technology in the future, which sounds awesome. Or as I call it, how to make the digital transformation actually work. Now, I want to set some context. I think you did a great job setting context. I want to dig in a little bit more so you understand where I'm coming from and what I'm talking about. So I started my career just a quarter of my life ago or something as an intern for this brand called Industry Week, which is like this no-nonsense executive level manufacturing brand for it. Worked my way up, took some weird directions and weird turns, eventually became the technology and innovation editor there, right at the beginning of the big data era, and working on AI and all these things that are coming in, and then up to chief editor, and now I'm at this VP level. And sitting at this perspective where I get to watch this content rolling in from 150 different brands and conferences, and 9 million readers and all this stuff, and understanding how the world works through this. And why am I telling you? I'm not like showing off how cool my job is. What I want to do is so you understand, I've watched this technology story play out over and over again in market after market and company after company. I've worked with hundreds of companies to see how they've done this. I've written thousands of case studies to see how they've done this digital transformation, how they've worked with this technology. So I've been in this for 20 years following this story. And all I'm saying this is so I can justify my claims for this statement right here, is that technology is amazing. All of it's building up to this. And if we look at what the technology can do today, I don't think that is, that's an exaggerated statement. We are at the point now where we can automate the unautomatable. We can understand the incomprehensible. We have the technology and the tools right now to predict the future so accurately, it should probably be burned at the stake. With the AI technologies. The Internet of Things have connected everything, every worker, every process, the tension of every screw in every component from here to China, and every component's temperature, condition, and state, all the way across the world in its global work. It's awesome what technology can do. And what's equally awesome is what companies are able to do with it. Here's just some stats. These are not new. These are not going to be a surprise to you. Everybody talks about this. When they talk about technology, they point to numbers like this. The fact that the net revenue growth for companies that do technology and do technology well is 200% more than those who are waiting on the side. That the profit margins are, 187% higher than those who aren't doing it. The total cost of quality, which is a really cool metric that I like, it's 22 to 50% cheaper for these tech-driven companies to achieve the quality that they need, and their manufacturing output is up 10 to 12%. The labor productivity is up 12%. Everything is awesome because, as I say, technology is amazing. That is the story that we hear. That is, all of this is true. These are objective facts. These are objective measures. And this is what you hear when you're talking about the future of manufacturing and technology, are exactly these kinds of numbers for this. And you have dudes up on stage singing the hype with silly haircuts, just like me, and this is what we do. This is the other side of it, though. So, the other premise is that amazing doesn't mean that it's useful. And this is a big point, and this is one that's often skipped in this whole thing. Because we have a million different manufacturers out of there who are convinced that if they buy just a bucket or two of digital transformation, they're going to be able to solve all of their problems. They're going to be able to hire all the people suddenly. They're going to maximize their productivity. They're going to improve all of their quality. It's going to be lights out, lightning fast tack time, 5 nines perfection overnight. If they buy the right package, if they do the right, if they invest in the right technologies, it's going to do this for them, and they don't even have to worry about it. All they need to do is go out and start signing some checks for it. But that's not true. That is nonsense, and I think everybody knows that. We take that just from a causal perspective and how it goes about. And we look at this, we see these numbers all over the place as well. 84% of the companies that are trying a digital transformation, trying to do this, have been stuck in pilot mode for over a year. 70% of the manufacturers who have these big, careful Industry 4.0 plans that make their investors super happy, haven't done anything for them. And 60% of the projects are shut down in proof of concept stage. So what do we make of this? What do we understand? I'm here to talk about how awesome technology is. I'm a hype man, I'm a futurist, and I'm supposed to not be talking about this. So how do we make sense of what is actually happening in this market? And that is actually what I'm here to talk about today. Because I'm going to talk about all these sweet technologies and what they can do, and give you lots of case studies that I picked up from the market. We're going to talk about that. But more importantly, I want to talk about the process behind this, why those successful companies succeed, why other people get stuck, and why they don't work. I'm not going to do that according to this rough plan. We already have a couple that we can cross off here. But the rough plan, I'm going to talk about the digital transformation in a nutshell. We're going to go into the boring world of AI. Then I'm going to talk directly about the great disconnect, the successes versus the less than successes in the digital space. And then what I've called, patent pending, the industry tested 5-step strategy for successful technology implementations that'll impress your friends and neighbors. And then with the Q&A, I'm going to be talking about technology and process all the way through this. The Q&A, man, we can go anywhere with this. We can talk about robots. We can talk about the lake. We can talk about anything. And we can go have fun with it. So that's where I want to hit today. So let's start with the digital transformation. So the first point here, digital transformation, I think sounds like one of those hype terms. Like everybody was crazy about IoT for a while, but found out it was just M2M, but in a new century, and we have all these hypes going up. I was intrigued enough that I took some classes at Cornell on digital transformation to understand it. The best finding that I had there was just learning that the digital transformation actually means a thing, and it's not just random words for it. But nobody else knows, so I wanted to share it with you. And we actually have this 3-step process, and I think this is critical. The first step is digitization. Now, digitization is the process of changing from analog to digital form. Now, this could be a couple of things. In your plants or in your businesses, it could be changing literally paper records into digital records. It could be recording things that have never been recorded before. Just creating a digital footprint for everything that you're doing. This is the digitization. This is the first step of the process. The second part of the process is digitalization. This is where you start tapping into that data to do interesting things internally, to improve your processes, to improve what's going on in your plants, and all of this stuff for it. And this is an important step, and this is where 90% of manufacturers really are right now, is tapping into the data that they start collecting. Digital transformation, let's get this right, The profound and accelerating transformation of business activities, processes, competencies, and models to fully leverage the changes and opportunities brought by the digital technologies and their impact across the business in a strategic and prioritized way. Clear as clear, everybody now knows what digital transformation is. That's fine. That's a hell of a sentence. We could spend the next half an hour diagramming it and trying to understand it, which would be fine, and I'm for it. Or we could talk about a light bulb. I am on team light bulb, if you are. I want to take us into a plant where a light bulb kind of exemplifies what we were just talking about. Now, this light bulb was hanging into a plant just like this. It was a very small plant with some significant issues in it. The primary issue that I was talking to them about was communication. So basically, we had this small setup with one team that had to handle multiple different operations. At the back of the show, they had to unpack all the boxes, get everything into progress, and put it in basically unpack it and get it going from the trucks into the assembly area. Then they had to do the actual assembly of the products when it was unpacked, and then when the trucks were there and they had enough products, they had to box it up and get it in the mail. This is fine. This is one team of workers doing this. Now raise your hand if you're in a plant where you're dealing with exactly this kind of thing. All right, a couple of brave people. Yes, a lot of people are in this situation. Now, the problem they're having, this is a very loud environment and a lot going on, and so they had no way to tell all their workers when it was time to move from one station to the other, because this would happen at irregular times depending on the needs of the day's business. And so there were expensive ways to fix this. They could have gone around and gotten some radios for everybody. They could have got some LED signs or some flashing lights or something like that, invested in new technologies and new tools for it. The CEO didn't want to do that for reasons. And so instead, they had somebody who was literally go out and tap them all on the shoulder and say, hey, move your ass, it's time to go over there, and gather up everybody to move to the other side of it. And that was not efficient, as you can imagine. It was so inefficient that it was costing every worker about an hour of productivity per day, per shift per day, which added up to about 40 missed hours of productivity per week just from the old shoulder tapping method. So this is a significant issue that they wanted to solve, and he needed a way to do it. The CEO was studying the problem, and he noticed this one light fixture over there. Wherever he was in this plant, he could see that light fixture. It was in his line of vision, everywhere, and he got fixated on this. What can we do with this light fixture? And how can I turn this into something? And that's how we got to the magic light bulb. Backstory for this. The guy didn't go out and buy a new technology for this, in part because he had just spent like $1 million on this new ERP system. And this ERP system was pulling in data from everywhere, from all of its suppliers, from every operation on the plant floor. It knew everything that was happening. And it had the analytics that tell everybody where to go. And he didn't want to invent or invest in another technology that was going to do the same thing. He wanted to use that technology that was the backbone of his company to drive that company forward and make these decisions for them. That's what he wanted to do. He didn't know how, and he didn't know what to invest in, and he didn't want to go out and spend $1,000 on radios that he didn't have to. So instead, he did what I think all of us would do in this situation. He called up his geeky nephew and had him do some techie stuff. That is dead serious what happened for it. And so the guy went out, this kid went out, and he got a Raspberry Pi board for like $30, and he got one of those color-changing light bulbs for Walmart for $5. And in about 15 minutes, he wrote a program that just took like those high-level status changes from their ERP system and fed it into the light bulb to change the colors. And we know that everywhere you stand on that floor, you can see that light bulb. So all anybody had to do was wait for that change, and it would signal them, and they would move it out. Which meant for $35, they had a traffic control system that streamlined their operations here. And it meant with this one light bulb, they were able to add 40 hours of productivity to the plant. They were add the equivalent work of one full worker, full-time worker per day for the cost of $35. ignoring the $1 million ERP system, sure. But $35 here, that's a sunk cost here. And this is what the digital transformation is, and this is how it works. And so this is the lesson here, and I think this is probably one of the most important things I'm going to talk about today. Well, what is the lesson of the light bulb? A couple of options. It could be that digital technologies help cheapskate bosses save a buck, which is true, yes, but that's not the lesson we're going to focus on here. The other one could be that if you go to Walmart right now and you find the light bulb, you're totally going to add 40 hours of productivity to your plant. No, do not take that one back. That's not the lesson. Or it could be that none of this has anything to do with the technology at all. The Raspberry Pi and the light bulb are irrelevant to the situation. What they found was the most efficient solution to their problem, and they used technology appropriately to solve that problem. This is the big lesson here. This is the great digital transformation in a nutshell. And the point is that it's not about the technology, or it's not just about software and technology. It's about this integration and this synthesis of using these technologies as a tool to solve real problems in your plant. Understanding the data sets that you're using, understanding what's going on in your plant and in your operations, and actually doing something with it to solve it. You're not going out and you're buying technology because your competitors are doing it, because your board wants you to do it. You're going out there and actually solving a problem. And chances are you can get 40 hours of productivity with a $35 light bulb project instead of a $10,000 radio and sign project. This is the digital transformation in its most effective form for it. And it seems silly, it seems small, but this is great. If we compound this across an organization, then progress starts. I'm going to jump here very, very quickly. I want to talk about artificial intelligence because I understand that there's a lot of interest in this room, and I wanted to talk a little bit about it. It connects here in interesting ways. So first, I defined digital transformation. Let's define artificial intelligence. This one isn't so hard because it has a definition. We're going to go with IBM's definition. Artificial intelligence leverages computers and machines to mimic the problem-solving and decision-making capabilities of the human mind. Great, and I trust them on that because they made Watson, and Watson is awesome. We all know that, and we've seen the power of it. So cool. That is artificial intelligence. That is the definition that we're going to be using. Now we have to talk about what AI actually is. So here, let's get some crowd involvement. Like from your perspective, when you hear about AI, what do you think? I'm sorry, what's that? Algorithms. Oh, we're getting technical on here. I'm looking at AI as HAL 9000, Skynet, our new overlords, or short of our new overlords, our replacements, because we're not going to need knowledge workers anymore because AI is so smart and clever that it's going to replace us all. This is when we're talking about AI, when everyone is excited about AI, when we have Elon Musk and everybody signing these decrees that that AI is the biggest threat. This is the idea, the big, exciting picture of AI. Now, what is AI actually in the world? What is it doing? This is the real question. It is doing exciting dominating things like helping get more accurate demand forecasting, guiding our predictive maintenance on our tools, doing machine or material procurement, and warehouse management, which is boring, right? We're talking about technology. I know. If you're in the field, it's super exciting. But if you're talking to somebody about AI and you're like, yeah, it helps me organize my warehouse, like that's the end of that conversation if they're not in the field for you. But this is where we are with the technology. It is mature enough that it's starting to solve these problems. And this is where I think most manufacturers are going to see the most benefit in the next couple of years, is from this kind of thing. Now, I want to put this into context real fast. Very briefly, the entire history of the human race. Volume 1, around 6 million years ago to 1954. Now, it started off, human potential and human endeavor was limited directly by the amount of stuff that we could carry, how much our bodies could do, how many times we do the same action over and over again, the kind of precision that we could perform on a given day. That was as far as we could progress as a culture. This is as far as we could progress as a world. We built tools to help us, but it was really the humans that was going to stop us until 1954. When Unimate hit the market and we had industrial automation and we could get this. And a lot of people were worried at first because it was taking jobs away, but what we found out is it was really just taking the limitations away. And it created more jobs than we've ever had in the market, and it's allowed us to do things that were totally physically impossible before because we have these tools at our disposal. Now, volume 2 of the entire history of the human race is a shorter segment, but we're moving faster now. This is 1980 through about 2013. 1980 was the start of the digital era, or the digital revolution. And once we got into this, we had a similar problem. We started creating data. And more data, and recording everything, particularly in the last 10 years, just mountains and mountains of data. We have planes creating like a terabyte of data a second, recording every turn of every blade in the engine, an impossible amount. And it's got to this point where we can no longer think of it. Our possibilities of analytics and our possibilities to move forward as an industry is limited by our brain power. And this data that we're dealing with now is just too complex for a human brain to go through. No matter how good you are at Excel, even if you know how to do pivot tables, you can't deal with some of these data. And then in 2013, Watson made a breakthrough, the very first viable application of artificial intelligence where it detected a form of cancer that the data couldn't confirm, or that the doctors couldn't confirm. AI was able to get in, diagnose this patient, and get him treatment. And this is when AI became something out of 80s horror movies and into something that's very practical. And this is where we are right now with this technology. And this is where a lot of companies are getting into. We had big data of 2010, 2012 that taught us to collect all the data. IoT, which taught us to put sensors on everything, and we collected data. We did as much analytics as we could. We've hit critical mass right now where we can no longer cope with most of the data in our systems. And that's where we are, and this is where AI is going to come in. I can talk a whole lot about this. I have a whole case study on here for one of Industry Week's Best Plants Awards winners. They're going to skip. I can come back to in the Q&A for that. Oh, 5 minutes. Okay, I'm going to go real fast now. All right, so now I want to talk about the Great Disconnect. Here, we're coming back to these numbers. All these people are doing awesome. All of these people are doing great. These people are not. Most of the people are not profiting from this. So what is the problem? This is my calculation. This is what, from talking to all these manufacturers, this is what I see in the market. When we're coming to them and saying, we have this sweet new technology, we have these new tools that we bought, and we want you to start using it instead. In the manufacturing world particularly, but not exclusively the manufacturing world, Jim knows, get a new CRM, it's havoc for that. But in the manufacturing world particularly, because everything is process-based, everything is protocol-based, when you bring in these new technologies, the CEO is excited about it, the CTO is excited about it. When you get to operations, this is what they hear. They say, this new technology is going to mean that I need new software, that I need new hardware, that I need new products and new processes. I'm going to hire new people. I'm going to have to get new skills. I'm going to have to meet all these consultants, set new protocols, set new patterns, et cetera, et cetera. So it's landing as a bomb right in the middle of production, which means you have this awesome Industry 4.0 plan in your company. Nobody is going to do it because they're all too busy. They're working too hard to make today's deadlines. They cannot take on a project of this scale. This is why they fail. This is why they stall. This is why they don't get anywhere, because it is outside the process. It is a new process tacked on to the old one and not replacing it. And this is the problem. And so here is where we get to the fun stuff, the strategy. The great digital transformation, industry tested 5-step strategy. So here's where like all that experience that I was detailing at first comes into play. All these thousands of people that I've talked to, these companies that I've worked through on this, a pattern emerged from this of what successful companies are doing and what non-successful companies are doing for this. And I want to share these with you in lightning speed so we can do it. And it's so easy. The first step of this 5-step process isn't a step at all. It's just a mental shift. So you don't have to do anything here, but think differently. Because everybody wants the revolution. They're like, if I invest in this thing, I'm going to be a digital company. It's going to be awesome. And overnight, we're going to be Google or Apple or whatever. And that is not going to happen. That is not how Google and Apple became Google and Apple. That is not how any company transformation works. It is a slow and iterative process. And we need to get that into our heads. That what we're doing is we're solving problems, we're evolving our business processes, we're evolving how we work as a company to grow into something else by dealing with the problems today and the problems that we see coming for tomorrow. It is evolution, not revolution. And this one, it's always stunning to me that this has to be a point. But the more companies I talk to, the more I realize that everybody skips this, which is define the value. Define the problem that you're trying to solve. And solve it. We're not going in and getting AI because it's cool, because some guy at Carthage told me to. We're going in because you have a problem with data and you need it to solve it. And identifying the right technologies for it. It could be a light bulb. It could be a radio system. You don't know this until you understand your problem and understand your assets. Now, the process that I have for this is 3-step. First, you have to ask yourself a question, what information intelligence do you need to solve this problem? And I mean this like broadly for this. Like, what do I need to help with my my supply chain? First, I need to know everything that's going on in my company. I need to know everything that's going on in the world, and I need to know everything that my competitors are doing. If you know that, then you don't have a supply problem anymore. You can accurately predict, which is great. That's your first step. Second one is, what data do you actually need for that intelligence? You need to know your consumption rate on your plant and how much you're actually using, 5 years and look 5 years ahead. So you need some systems for that. You need to know what your company, what your competitors are actually up to, what they're releasing and how much they're consuming. So you can do that. You need to know what's going on in R&D. You can do that with data scraping. And then you need a system that'll make sense of that. It could be Excel sheet and a really smart data scientist. It could be AI, but you don't know until you go through that process. And then, what technology do you need to collect all that? And that's the final port, and that's where you start investing, and that's where you start solving your actual problems. Quick point before I go to the next one. On this one, I like to go out on this bold statement to say, if you are investing in technology that does not help you do your business today, does not fit into your 5-year plan for your company, it does not help your customers now, does not help your future customers, what you're trying to do, you are probably investing in the wrong technology. Unless you see a clear case for it, chances are it's not going to succeed. And that is something to remember. That's something to go into your meeting when somebody's talking about this cool 3D printer that they really want. What are they solving? What are you going to do? It opens up opportunities. There's a place for that in R&D, not somewhere else. After that, you nibble at the edges. You do an experiment somewhere where you can't hurt the core business. You get to know this software, because chances are, if you're getting into AI, if you're getting into robotics, you're getting into 3D printing, you've never used these before, you don't have that internal expertise, you don't know which software is best. This is where you go in and you start playing around at the edges. You start experimenting with the technology so you can build that expertise, you can build those connections on your own, and you develop an ROI, and you develop a proof of concept for it. Then you develop a roadmap after that. You know how it works, you know what it can do, you know what you can expect from it, so you take it from the edges and you build it into the core of the company. Like, how are we going to work this into what we're already doing? How could we transfer our current processes to use this technology, and how do we do this? How do we roll it out? And then you deploy. And this curious thing happens when you deploy. That bomb from before, when you had that technology, is not a bomb anymore, because you find that you already know this new software, you already have the hardware you need, you already have the products and the processes and the talent and the skills and everything else I have on that list already set in that company, in your company, and you can roll it out without running into problems. This is how people see the results that they have from their technology, because they walk through this process, they make it part of their manufacturing environment for it. I have time to go into one last case study. It's a good one. All right, very quickly, I want to show how this works in real life. This is Toyota material handling. This is a really cool story I got to tell a few years ago. So Toyota is, the lift trucks is in an interesting position because they're 100%, their most important KPI is uptime on these things. Because anybody who uses these in your factories know if they're working, the factory is working. If they break down, everything stops and it's chaos. And that is a challenge for Toyota because they give you preventative maintenance plans based on what you tell them you're going to use these machines for, but I guarantee you you're not using the machines for that. You tell them it's going to be working 100% of its time in an air-conditioned, cement-floored facility going 2 miles an hour, but really, like Tony is out doing donuts in the back lot and going over jumps in the rain. Everybody knows this, right? And they can't protect it because no matter if they're doing that, if it breaks, it's Toyota's fault, and they lose market share from it. So they want to fix this, and they want to reduce downtime, and they want to improve everything. Their idea for this is that they want a global telematics program so they can monitor conditions of every machine they have in the world in real time so they can tell if something is going to break, if something is wearing that they need to fix, so they can get those repairs in before anything breaks, before the plant stops, which is awesome, except they're missing a couple assets. They had no sensors on their trucks to record this kind of information. They had no communication protocols on the trucks to send it out. They had nowhere to send it to. They didn't have data scientists to make sense of that data. And I think that's it. So basically they had an idea and zero experience, assets, or expertise to pull it off, which is hard because they know that they're going to have to get into artificial intelligence. They know they're going to have to get into predictive analytics because this data set is going to be massive and irrational. So what they did, they experimented all over, but they ran experiments on different sensors, on different protocols and different systems for it. My favorite one was their AI. Because they're coming into this, they had no experience with AI at all. And they wanted to understand how it works, and they wanted to understand how the vendors work. So they had all these experiments around the company. And my favorite one, remember, this is telematics. This is just, eventually it's going to be condition monitoring on trucks. But they wanted to understand how this system worked. And so they did it in the least risky place possible. They had it monitoring a single welding cell in a single plant in Kentucky. And all it was supposed to do is determine if welds were good or bad. And the way AI works, you know, it comes in as a baby, and you have to teach it how to walk, basically. So what they did, they had all these welders there with 30, 40 years experience, and they all dedicated a few hours in a week to sit there with the computer and just say, good weld, bad weld. Like a picture would come up of a weld, good weld, bad weld, good weld, bad weld, until the system was able to learn what a good weld is and what a bad weld is and tell it. They did that for about a week, and then they hit go. And this system had no chance to take over the world or steal our nuclear codes. All it was doing was saying, is it a good weld or a bad weld? And within a couple of minutes, it scanned 33,000 welds, and it found that one of those robots was just slightly going out of spec. Like, it was still very much in spec, and that those welds were going to be solid for the next 25 years, surely, but it noticed a pattern that nobody else could notice within 3 minutes of running. And it was the kind of change that nobody would have noticed for another month, and even then, it probably would have taken an X-ray of destructive testing to understand. And so right away, it's like, this is our ROI, this is the right technology for us, this is the right AI engine for us, and they pursued it from there. Without risking anything, spending maybe $1,000 to get this set up, and they were good. They had their partners, they had their software, everything together. All right, and that is the end of me talking. The big lessons: put problems ahead of the solutions, develop processes, not disruptions, and all of these easy 5-step plans. That's the end of my presentation part, and I'm happy to answer any questions or gab about anything you'd like to.
Since no one else asked, I figure, have you thought a lot about user-end application of artificial intelligence, such as Neuralink, or something to modify or amplify human intelligence to play a role in this?
You're asking me if I'm familiar with modern film. Yes. And I know, like Elon Musk talks a lot about this, and some other people. I think that there are interesting potentials there. But that is on the wacky side of the technology, and this is why I framed the conversation about AI as boring, because as I'm watching these trends, like I've worked through many hype cycles in the tech space, so I'm sure everybody here has been on the receiving end of people like me writing hypey articles about cool technologies. What I've found through that experience is, like, if we're at like the mind-meltingly cool state of a technology, and like, look at all these things that we can do with our brains if we upload it, chances are that is totally impractical and not actually happening for it. What happens, and consequently, the more exciting a new technology is, the less exciting it is for me, because I don't think that there's a current application for it. When I get excited about a technology is when it gets boring. Like cloud computing absolutely changed the world. It did not change the world when everybody was talking about it. It changed the world when people stopped talking about it, because we were using it 17 times a day. We are using AI right now 100 times a day. I'm making up numbers right now, because it isn't that point. There is a part that we can interface with all kinds of technologies, and AI is one of them. And sure, that could be cool. I'm not going to speculate on how cool it is, because I'm jaded at this point. I mean, are you designing something that we could use?
No, I was just curious, because I do believe that that's the direction that our society is going as a whole. I mean, 15 years ago, iPhones didn't exist, and now they're a part of everyone's daily life. They hold our calendars. Our social life is all in this single device, and I just think it's interesting to see how you see that from your experience, how that may play a role in the development of business and professional life.
All right, so do you want to go full geek? Because I'll go full geek. All right, so one of the most profound things that happened, humans and technology, I think, was somewhere in the 80s, which was the mouse interface. I have no idea where I read this, but it was a fascinating article, where there's basically no other corollary movement in the history of humanity that matched the idea of moving something here by moving something here. It was a totally new experience for us. And it took us about 10 seconds to learn that technique, and it's become integrated. And remember, that was like the 80s mouse, that boxy thing that was the opposite of ergonomic, and it took us just a second and a half to figure out how it works. And then look at our car. When you're driving a car, you feel totally integrated with it, right? If somebody hits your car, they don't hit your car, they hit me. You interface completely with your car in the whole system. For some reason, our brains are wired for exactly this kind of thing. We are great at leeching onto technology and augmenting our own abilities. So yes, there is a context for it. I think that there's a biological context for it, and it could be very interesting. I'm not going to speculate on it. I would like to augment my brain. But we'll see. I mean, we've been talking about that since The Matrix.
So this works really well for an environment where, you know, a company is producing a lot of the same product. But how can this apply to, like, my company that produces very low quantities of a lot of different products? And that's something that we've faced and tried to figure out how we can integrate some of these technologies, but have not been able to implement them.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I mean, it's a different animal in those environments. And I don't know, this thing I skipped might touch it. There's this company outside of Seattle. I have too many animations, it makes this hard. Called Applied Technical Services. And they are high mix, low volume place. They assemble circuit boards, and then the actual assembly that they go into in this plant. It's a very small, very like human led endeavor in Everett, Washington, and they're doing really good work. And it's a very similar situation. Like the difference is they use a lot of tiny components, and that was their issue for it. And they ended up in like this global battle to get all those components, and that's what they had to. It was their challenge, because they had to fight Ford, and they had to fight all of these other, like, I mean, circuit boards are in literally everything right now. And had to fight all of them. And to do that, their lead time went from a week to a month to 6 months to 56 weeks. And so they have a high mix. They don't know what project they're going to be working on next month, but they have to predict what they're going to be doing 56 weeks out. I don't know if that matches your situation, but that's where they found like this big data in the predictive analytics to help understand that, so we can put the orders in more quickly. And that has worked out very well for them. And a lot of theirs was home built without a lot of experience. In other cases, like it's really like getting into the value proposition. And I would encourage you not to look at which technologies fit your company, but take a hard look at your problems, go through the 5 whys and really break down into what is the fundamental problems that you're facing, and figure out the best way to do it. And chances are there's going to be a software or a physical device that's going to help you, but as a general statement, the kind of manufacturer you are, it's going to depend on your situation. I don't know if this matches what you're doing. It's the closest slide I had handy at the moment. All right, oh, good.
When you asked at the beginning of your talk about what is AI, or give examples of AI, I did think of medicine and medical imaging, and in fact, the first example you gave of AI was Watson in 2013, which was a medical application. So my question to you is, today, what is AI in the future going to be doing on the medical front? Because I see that as, for doctors, an incredibly important thing. I know they're now working side by side. How do you see that interface today and in the future for the medical field?
That is an excellent question. I think the first thing that needs to happen is we need to improve the data that we're feeding into the system. Because we can go in for MRIs and those usual kinds of tests. AI right now, they're proving that they do a better job of detecting things like cancers and anomalies than others, but that depends on the test, and most people don't have those tests, and those tests are expensive. I think if we get to the point where we can get more data on the human body and the inner workings, because it's a perfect environment. Like, a human body is as complex as a manufacturing plant, and the causal relationships between the different components are just as mind-boggling. If we can get more data from that, we're going to be able to discover connections. We're going to be able to discover things that we can't possibly understand yet. But I think the real problem is the data. We just don't have it yet. And so I'd say nanobots hooked into the Neuralink, something like that, then we can get everything. But I think that is the fundamental problem. It's easier for all these things in a physical environment because you can put a sensor on it. It's hard with the human body. If you can hack that, then I think we're going to be in good shape. In the short term or midterm, it's just understanding the data that we have far better than a human can. So on that, there was a study about they did a test of breast cancer identification in humans versus doctors, or humans versus doctors, humans versus AI and AI beta. And I think that is profound, and it's nothing against the doctors. It's just limits the humans. Yeah, we could save a lot of people just with that application. Sorry.
Hi, fascinating discussion. I was thinking, what size company can take advantage of this technology? Is it 5 million? You got to be 50 million revenue?
Well, it depends what you're going for, and I don't know if there are ranges. I mean, there are ranges of all these packages. Like Toyota Material Handling, it's a giant company. They're using startup for this project. ATS is a small company. The light bulb company is small. They invested in the ERP system because they had to. Like everybody here has some sort of ERP system, probably. And that's like a required expense for business today in a lot of respects. And so you get into it.
So one thought I had is if you were smaller, especially small manufacturing companies here in the Midwest, upper Midwest, could you do a shared service with this AI?
That's really interesting. A couple things. For one thing, I think it's important to understand that AI isn't a thing for it, and so we have all of these different companies out there that design different algorithms that perform different functions, and I think it's a worthy bet that there's a company out there that with that kind of model that allowed you to crowdsource it. I do know there's a company that I talked to just a couple of years ago. The company has a name and it's located in a place, but I don't know those details. And it was exactly that. They were trying to get as many manufacturers as they could to go in on something, collect all their data so they could provide blanket analytics for the industry, which I thought was a great idea. The problem that they were having with it was the willingness to share that data. And depending on what industry you're in, people are more sensitive to it. And I think that killed that particular project eventually. But it doesn't have to always. I think that came out at a time where we were more sensitive to like more sensitive and less cognizant of data security. And people thought if everybody knows your metadata, they're going to be able to reverse engineer to figure out what's actually going on in your company. I think we've progressed from there. I think that's a model that could work, and I'm sure that somebody is exploring it somewhere. If you give me your card, I can do some digging. But I think it's a compelling model because most manufacturers are small. In the country, and if we can tap into that and really give you tools, then American manufacturing can get a hell of a boost. We just need something to give us a shove, and I think that would be a good way to do it. Excellent point.
So, Travis, I have a comment and a question. So maybe taking a leap of faith here, but my sense is a lot of folks think that this AI and digitization is so amenable to manufacturing, and guaranteed there's tons, if not all, service businesses that could also benefit. Oh, yeah. I say that because a little while back we had to name a company, and there's some AI software out there where you put in all the stuff that your company does and the adjectives and adverbs and what you want your name to message, and it just learns what you want and gives you these options. So my first comment is that even if you're a law firm, definitely an accounting firm could handle this AI transformation. And then my question is, for manufacturers and service businesses that want to take advantage of this, I'm sure that in a lot of cases the impediment is that we just don't know what we don't know. Mm-hmm. And it would be great to have someone like yourself walk into our facility, we explain what we do, what the inefficiencies are, and then you come up with some options, because we're not experts at that. Yeah. And in fact, if you're not busy around 3:30, my place is 10 minutes away.
Yes, right now, Hessman Inc. is born. I mean, first off, on the comment. Absolutely right. What I'm talking about is in the frame of manufacturing, because that's where I've spent most of my career, but absolutely not. I'm in the publishing business. We are undergoing a digital transformation and have been for the last 10 years, and it's profound and it's rocking us as much as it's rocked everywhere else. And all around us in media, there are some companies that do it well, some companies that don't. They sink or swim based on that. And at the same time, I am right now working with a vendor who is giving us an AI system that will automatically rank the importance of, or not importance, relevance of different press releases that my magazines get based on a whole number of factors. And we taught them what the publisher or what the editors like to rewrite and publish, and so it automatically ranks them. So AI is going to have a dramatic impact for us, and digital transformation is very, very real, as Jim can attest. And as far as that, like, there are a lot of consultants who do exactly this. They can come in. You just got to make sure that they're offering what you want, which is not to sell you a bunch of technology, but to actually do an audit and try to help you identify problems that you have and offer you some solutions that may do it. They might be technical. It might just be like good old-fashioned lean thinking and reworking the flow in the factory, things like that. And so if they don't start with that, then you're probably talking to somebody trying to sell you software, and so. But yeah, it's a rich market that I'm not prepared to go into yet.
Hi, thank you for being here. Unless I wasn't paying attention earlier, have you ever done any work with the Department of Defense? I think keeping ahead of the curve with technology, I think defense, going back to Ronald Reagan and the Star Wars and all this sophisticated war, just, nuclear age, obviously. I guess my thinking is that I don't know if they keep all that top secret, or if you people in the technology information age work them, have any.
Well, I don't have security clearance. So I've worked with them. I've written stories with them. They've introduced me to their network of manufacturing partnerships, which is great. But they've never let me root through their drawers, so I don't know what's going on there. I will say that they are incredibly interested in all of these things, obviously. And they're using a lot of, it kind of goes both ways. So they are helping manufacturers create new products and unlock new technologies and innovations, because they have way larger R&D budget than anyone imaginable, and it's going to be private industry that's going to help them do their thing. And now also they're finding partnerships with manufacturers that are already doing it. I think the prime example, because it turned into a really good story, is this exoskeleton. This guy created this exoskeleton just to help repetitive injuries. He had all this IP for it and built up this company, and it was really, really good. And then they had a partnership with DOE because they wanted to give them into soldiers, because soldiers are doing a lot of repetitive action there, and they needed that extra boost. And so the guy, I think it was like Dr. Cause or something like that, he quit and started his own company, gave up all of his IP, and started again working on the industrial side of it. So there's a whole lot of stories with that. I just know that because I covered that in one of my magazines, and so it's a good story. So yes, DOE is all over this space. They're doing all kinds of things with it. I don't know their secrets. If I would, I'd tell you.
Our last question.
Actually, I thought of my question before he asked his. But my question is, with everything digital, what is the cybersecurity on all of this? How does a manufacturer, how does any company protect themselves from cybersecurity or with cybersecurity?
All right. How much time do we have? 0 minutes? Because I have an hour that I can talk about this. Yes, this is the crisis of our age. So most plants are as cyber secure as they think they are, and they do what they think is right. But most machine tools at some point during the day is going to be charging somebody's cell phones. Most of the computers are going to get a jump drive stuck into them. And there are all kinds of things. Somebody's going to click on a stupid link, and it's going to happen. And the problem in the manufacturing sector is twofold. One, this is a very attractive target for people. Like early on, it was like people just coming in and messing with stuff, just to be punks. But there were a couple of hacks recently that were like designed specifically to undermine some safety protocols on some machines that could have killed people. Done it. We're like going after critical industry. It's a real threat to the country, and it is something that recently. Oh, the second part that makes it so dangerous is that nobody talks about it. I imagine that most of the manufacturers in this room have had some sort of breach that some people in the company know about, but the public does not. That is a significant issue for this. Now, the corollary that I always make for this is safety. We were just talking about this earlier today. If you look at the safety records of death, injuries, and dismemberments in manufacturing, before 1970, this was one of the safest industries in the world. Almost nobody was hurt, almost nobody was killed. We would have an occasional event, but nobody was hurt. In 1970, suddenly people started getting dismembered and killed all over the place. And what changed between 1969 and 1970? OSHA. And we had to start recording it. And once they started recording it, nobody could sweep it under the carpet anymore. You had to accept the fact that you were killing people and you were hurting people, and you had no choice but to deal with it, because if OSHA didn't shut you down, your shareholders would if the public found out what you were doing. And that was the most significant change that we've had in manufacturing in quite a long time, was OSHA and the safety standards. We are at that point now with cybersecurity. I gave a speech on this a couple of years ago, and I looked up and it said that there were 13 confirmed data breaches in small and mid-sized businesses in 2018. Anybody believe that? Like, I personally know 14 companies that were hacked that year. And it's because they don't have to report it. You sweep it under the table. Like, you hope that it doesn't make the news, because if it makes the news, everyone's going to be upset. But that's not the problem. The word getting out about getting hacked is not the issue. The hack is the issue, and that's what we need to protect. And like, my advice is like, we need to get serious about this. We need protocols. We need a system. We need a OSHA for safety, or OSHA for cybersecurity. And I know that the government is working on something like it. It's very compelling to me because I've seen it work before. The good news is manufacturers have started taking it more seriously in the last couple of years. This was a point that we made on Industry Week. We would write about cybersecurity because I believed it was important, but our readers would not click on it ever. And I was like, I don't care. Like, we're a database company. We're following the reader interest, and we're trying to serve the audience. Like, this is stuff that they need, and we're going to continue to write on it every week until they discover the value for it. And so that has also given us a good measure for the interest for it. And we see this rising interest in cybersecurity among our readership, and going back to that old stuff that we've been publishing to follow it along. So people are waking up to the idea that this is serious and starting to protect themselves. But getting to the point, yeah. I talked about this last night. If there are 100 different brands that we have at Endeavor, one of them focuses on security. I don't read that one very often because it's scary. I have the luxury of being able to stick my head in the sand sometimes. As manufacturers, you don't, because you're creating this, you have to deal with it. But yeah, there's a lot. The Security Info Watch covers this well, and it's a scary field.
Thank you so much.
That was a long answer. I'm sorry.
That's all right. Thank you so much, Travis. Thank you so much to our community for coming out and learning today and having conversations with us today. Hope you'll come out to the next one on March 8th.